Michelle Castillo spoke with Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg about electric vehicles, Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, Democrats in the midterms, and more. Take a look.
There was always this big obstacle, as long as I've been alive, on transportation, which is we didn't have much funding, and now we do. The president's bipartisan infrastructure law is the biggest commitment of federal dollars to improve transportation in my lifetime. Roads and bridges, ports and airports, trains and transit, you name it. That doesn't mean all our problems go away, but it means we have a huge wind at our back delivering on the kinds of transportation solutions that are going to define the 2020s, 2030s, 2040s even. And that's what makes it exciting to come to South by Southwest and talk with some of the people who are following these technologies and ideas the most closely and talk about where we're headed.
Now, the bipartisan infrastructure bill has a lot on increasing the number of EV chargers. How do you think this will help EV adoption in the U.S.?
Well, one of the biggest questions people have when they're thinking about getting an EV is, how can I charge it? Now, part of that's that a lot of people don't realize that you can often charge these vehicles in your home if you're fortunate to live in a single-family home. But not everybody lives in a single-family home. Plus, some people need faster charging than just overnight. That's where these EV chargers come in. A backbone of chargers across our highway systems so that anytime you take a road trip, you know that you can charge up, same as you know you can fill up on gas when you set out on the interstate, number one. And number two, making sure that we position chargers in communities in places where it might not be automatically profitable to do so, but by adding them there, it means more people can take advantage of the benefits of owning an EV.
What else do you think needs to be done besides adding chargers to increase American EV adoption?
Well, we need to continue to make EVs more affordable. They're getting to be more affordable than many people might assume. The pickup trucks have prices in around $40,000, for example, but that's out of reach for a lot of folks. That's why we've proposed tax credits that would bring a $40,000 pickup truck down into the high 20s. Some of the cars that are in the 30s into the 20s or closer to 20. Chasten and I, our first electric vehicle was a plug-in electric vehicle. We used C-Max. We got it for about $14,000. Plugged it in our garage in South Bend, and owning it meant that most of the time we never had to buy gas. We saved a lot of money by owning it. We want more Americans to be able to afford the upfront price so that they can take advantage of those savings on the back end of not having to fill up all the time.
Now, I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. I live in New York City, public transportation, and obviously during the pandemic, across the U.S., you saw so much public transportation ridership decline. A lot of the cities funded those projects and kind of kept them going, but those funds are going to run out. What can be done next to help a lot of these systems?
Well, the American Rescue Plan contained funding to support transit for exactly this reason. Ridership collapsed when people weren't going outside of their homes, and it's going to take a while for transit agencies to come back out of that. We just released another $2.2 billion in direct aid to transit agencies to help them not have to lay people off, not have to cancel routes because of those funding shortfalls. We're also, though, funding transit agencies for the future, not just making up for funding gaps, but helping them plan for what's next, helping bus authorities buy new electric buses that run cleaner and are cheaper to maintain, helping transit agencies add routes and frequency. It's one of the best things in the president's bipartisan infrastructure law, an unprecedented level of federal support to transit, by the way, in rural as well as urban communities.
Speaking of urban communities, I saw a pilot program in Boston that was testing free bus routes to help adoption of public transportation, as well as help Americans who are struggling at this time get to their jobs in the places they need to be. What do you think about this plan, and do you think it can be implemented in more cities across the U.S.?
So I'm very interested to see the results of that pilot, to see how things go in Boston. I know Kansas City has been trying to do something similar, and I think we should learn from this. It may or may not be right for every location, but certainly something that deserves to be taken seriously. Anything we can do that brings relief for riders and supports transit agencies deserves a look.
Now, this is something that your husband is very passionate about. Florida recently passed legislation called Don't Say Gay, which makes it very difficult to discuss LGBTQ plus issues in middle schools and even sometimes high schools. How do you feel about this legislation, and what do you think can be done to help people understand more broader viewpoints?
Well, the problem with this legislation is it effectively pushes people back into the closet. It says that you can't even discuss your family, for example. At least it seems to imply that in a classroom in Florida. We see things going on here in Texas too, really going after the LGBTQ plus community. Not because a lot of people were asking for saw some problem that needed to be fixed by laws like this, but I think really because of politics. And I think it's coming from a lot of politicians who don't want to have to explain their lack of answers on issues that are affecting people economically, affecting people in school systems, for example. So they're turning to this kind of scapegoating or this kind of, frankly, ganging up on vulnerable people. And the pushback on it, though, has been really inspiring.
Now, the Democrats face a difficult midterm election. There have been successes like the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Do you think this is enough to push Democrats through the midterms?
I think we have a lot going for us in terms of the success of these historic pieces of legislation. I mean, being able to improve transportation for this many Americans is a big deal. The other thing we have going for us, of course, is that people agree with us on issue after issue after issue. And from now that I'm wearing a government hat, not a campaign hat, my main focus is to make sure we can just keep delivering on the opportunities in front of us, making people's lives better. I know it's what the president focuses on, and I really believe that good policy is good politics.